And now for the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode 26. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. In this episode, I get to talk to Michael Griffin. An absolutely fabulous conversation. Made me think. I love things that make me think. We talk in this first part of the chat about practice and how to practice. Some really great ideas there. Michael spent a lot of time thinking, researching, studying, presenting in this area. Fascinating. We talk about growth mindset and talk about metacognition. Absolutely fantastic. Intrinsic motivation, all sorts of things. The metacognitive modelling is also really powerful. Look, I want you to just get in there and listen yourself. It's absolutely fabulous. Enjoy the first part. Oh, and by the way, if you're one of these people that turns off my episode just before the end because you don't want to hear the end stuff, stay till the end. I tell a really good joke at the end of every episode. It's really worth hanging in there till the end. My jokes are fabulous. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to my chat with Michael Griffin, the first part. I know you are going to love it and you want to go and connect with him afterwards. It's fabulous. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and a big hello to Michael Griffin. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Debbie.
Now, I'm going to start just reading a really brief bio, okay? And there's many, many details that aren't included. So this is just a little summary. So here we go. Australian Michael Griffin is an educator, keynote speaker, author, conductor, and pianist. Michael's professional development for staff and enrichment lectures for students and parents examine the factors that impact continuous improvement toward exceptional achievement. Face-to-face sessions, online courses, and published books explore teacher and student mindsets, metacognition, intrinsic motivation, and deliberate practice. Now, there was heaps more I could say. I just tried to get the essence. So, Michael, before we go on, what would you like to add specifically to that quick summary of who you are for those people who don't know you?
Oh, look, I think that captures what I'm interested in, certainly from the education perspective. I love learning, and I get a buzz out of seeing learners be engaged and motivated and believing in themselves. So they're the areas that I study, and I think you summarise that well. Thanks, Debbie. Yeah.
Good. Well, when we were thinking about having this chat, there are so many areas that we could talk about. And we sort of had a bit of a choice, really. So do you summarise your work in roughly 3 areas? Is that fair to say?
Well, that's fair to say. And when I started this part of my professional life, which is teacher PD and speaking with parents and children too, I might add, the way I saw it was what do I think can make a difference in the learning lives of people? What are the most important factors that separate learners, that differentiate ability? So it's an age-old question, but one that I frame a lot, which is, why do some people achieve so much more than other people? Why do they get better than others? How does that work? So in terms of the 3 areas, being a music educator, for me, so important that kids know how to practice music, or anyone knows how to practice music. So I've investigated that in a fair bit of detail, as I think you know. Hence that book I wrote, Learning Strategies for Musical Success. It's all about that, because I suspect from my experience that a lot of us have we might say things to kids like, oh, you need to practice more. You know, go and have you done your practice? But I think we need to be more specific on that. I observe that a lot of kids don't know how to practice, and we all know that to become a musician, it's all about practice. It's all about practice. It's how you, and it's understanding different types of repetition, and not just the drill or blocked repetition, which some people think that's the sum total of repetition. No, variable repetition, spaced repetition, interleaved repetition, they all work on different ways on the brain and memory. And of course, chunking and slow practice, the fundamentals. So that's one area. It's skill development. How do I get better at what I do, and what will make a difference to my musical development? Secondly, second big area that I've looked at is about growth mindset. Now, I know that a lot of teachers are aware and parents aware of the idea of mindset, but the more I investigate this, the more fascinating it is just how deeply ingrained mindsets are in our minds. And we know if we talk about, say, advocacy, I think the world could be a much more musical place if we avoid this notion of talent, because mindset is so related to talent, and people are very quick to judge themselves as being not talented. If they crash and burn at something, well, I failed at that, I guess I'm just not talented. And if people think they're not talented at anything, they don't really try anymore. They're done. And we see that in the world of mathematics too. Once a kid says, I'm not mathematical, they will never put the effort in to get good at maths. It's so sad, Debbie. This is debilitating stuff. So mindset, and maybe we can thrash that out at some point in one of our talks, but mindset is so crucial. And we all know, we've all heard that many adults say, oh, I can't sing to save myself. I could never do this. I could never. Well, presently you might not be able to, but that's what the learning journey is all about. Yes. Where's the point where you can't improve at something? Really? Is there nothing more you can do? Now, you don't have to want to get good at anything, but let's not sacrifice future richness of life based on this idea that I could never do that. So that's a whole other area I look at, Debbie, and most recently, and well, I say recently, but it's been about 10 years, metacognition. Metacognition is fascinating. And for me, metacognitive teaching, it represents the enjoyment of teaching, seeing kids engaged and become self-motivated, because both mindset and metacognition are richly associated with intrinsic motivation. So the effective teacher is thinking, how can I influence this child's ability to motivate themselves? Which is a shift, isn't it, from that my job is to motivate you, and as a teacher, I have to motivate you. No, it's a funny thing. The more we actively try and externally motivate someone, the less responsibility they take to motivate themselves. And that's the important thing. We must learn to self-motivate, hence intrinsic motivation. So yeah, they are compartmentalized. I do often talk about them in the same because they interweave and cross and are all related. But these days, some of my courses, Debbie, are in jurisdictions like New South Wales and the ACT, where they have specific accredited teacher training courses. So hence I have compartmentalized them for that reason.
Right. But they're all, well, actually, it's like music generally. It's like saying, I'm only teaching about this rhythmic element. You know, you can't just take that in isolation, or like I'm only doing responding, or I'm only doing composing. You can't. It's like music. It's all just interconnected, isn't it? And I think teachers are very guilty. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't speak on behalf of lots of teachers, but, you know, how many of us do say, oh, look, you just need to practice more, but we don't have the skills necessarily to help them learn to practice well. So I think it comes down to the teacher being upskilled in those areas. I need to be really good at knowing how to practice well and how to lead my children to practice well, I need to really understand this mindset stuff. Because again, mindset's a bit bandied about, isn't it? In the education world, it's very important you have the right mindset. Yet good, like anything, that needs to be unpacked and understood. And then not only understood for you as an educator, but then you need to learn how to lead your children to those understandings. And then, as you said, metacognition is all intertwined into that. So fascinating. A lot to do with the brain, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Well, the brain commands what our bodies do. You know, the brain it's all about the brain. Memory is stored in the brain. And memory is the core of intelligence. You know, memory is the residue of what we think about, what we pay attention to. So, hey, it is all connected, as the example you made with musical instruction too. And that's the fascination of learning is making connections between disparate areas and getting creative and seeing these connections. What growth mindset and metacognition have in common is they're both richly related to the idea of teacher expectation. And we know, even from the work of John Hattie, we know that the most consistent predictor of student achievement is the high expectation of a teacher. So you think about this, every time we think to ourselves, if we do, these kids are really talented over here. What does that say about what we deep down believe about some other kids? So if we go down this route of talent identification, then we don't do it deliberately. We all do things with warm hearts, but we cannot help but have different expectations for other children. And expectation is palpable, and kids recognize it. Well, John Hattie says, as soon as you walk in that classroom, kids know whether you believe in them or not. It is so powerful. And this is well known. There's no surprises about this, but in the world of psychology, the golem effect, the low expectation, is so perceivable that kids will achieve less based on our expectations. Even though we might crow, but hang on, I treat everyone the same. Well, we think we do, but we don't if we have different expectations. So it needs to be explicitly understood. And it's so important for our children that we have this idea of open expectation. Who knows what you can achieve? I'm not going to put a lid on it. Kids prove us wrong all the time, you know, and teachers, I've had many say to me, wow, that kid really surprised me. I didn't think they can do that. Well, let's not put a lid on anyone, you know, and the way this plays out with expectations, it's interesting. I think, you know, when we were young teachers, we did all sorts of things with so much enthusiasm, but hey, we all make mistakes. And I remember I used to say things like, yeah, he's a B student or she's a B student. Now that's putting someone in a box. Goodness me, I hope I'd never say something like that these days.
Yeah, but because the problem is though, the whole system, sweeping generalization about to come, but the whole system makes us do that. But as long as our attitude with those children don't keep them in the box. Like, I mean, I have to. My system tells me I've got to put a label on them for their report cards.
But that's okay. But grades are a snapshot in time.
Yes.
Grades they don't predict. They don't actually predict potential. It's very hard to find any tool that consistently or accurately predicts future achievement. So, and I think we can make that clear to kids and to parents. Well, right now you've earned a B. That's where you're sitting. But you don't have to live there for the rest of your life. And if I'm saying something like she's a B student, it almost implies that that's a global thing. That's just, you know, this kid's okay, but they're not really that musical. They're never going to be a Mozart, which is a silly thing to say anyway, in my view. And we often do compare ourselves to these sort of people right up there. It's about, you know, how good can you get? I don't know. All I know is the greatest predictor of getting good at anything is the quality and the quantity of your own effort. You know, if it is to be, it is up to me. You got to do the work. And I can't do that. I don't know how good you can get. So, and that's open expectation. And that is very powerful. It's very powerful. So, yeah.
So how do teachers generally get themselves to that point where they have these open expectations? Is there, what sort of thing do you recommend teachers do to get themselves in this right mindset to help children achieve whatever they wish to know that it's open-ended?
Ultimately, having open expectations is a decision, because if you think about it, it really does stem down, and it's a very challenging area when we talk about talent, because I know, and this is the thing about mindset, as you say, it gets bandied around, but the research tends to suggest that the majority of teachers teach with a fixed mindset. That's why mindset courses for kids don't work that well, because it's not about the kids, it's actually about the teachers. Kids are born with a growth mindset. It's yes. When it's the adults that get in the way. So we need to examine things. Now, I know many people believe in talent. Not everyone does, but many people do. And what's interesting, Debbie, is it doesn't matter what the truth is about talent. Okay, there's very little evidence to substantiate it. One of the greatest advocates of the growth, the changing mindset, is neuroscience. It's neural connection. Okay, you've got 86 billion brain cells. We've all got about the same, but that's not what makes you smart. What makes us smart are the connections between those brain cells. And 80 to 90 trillion, as I say to kids, if you want mashed potato brain, just sit on the sofa and do nothing all day and you'll get mashed potato brain. If you want a beautiful, richly connected brain, well, here's the top 3 things that we know if you can do. Read books, move your body, and make music. Not necessarily in that order, but they're the best things we know of for brain activity. Right. So, and this is where everyone's different. We don't all have the same ability at things. We don't always have the same comprehension of maths and English and all these areas of intelligence, because we decide to pay attention to different things. So, so the first thing I'd say is, well, I said 2 things there. One is that neuroscience is a great advocate for the brain that changes itself, which was the title of that book by Norman Doidge. I saw you nod, so you're probably familiar with that. Yeah, quite a seminal book on this, the brain that does change. But secondly, how do we come to that point? Well, as I said, if people want to believe in talent, okay, but that's not what. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It's all about perception. And if a learner perceives that they are not musical, they will not want to engage. They won't engage. Not much anyway. I know, and this is like you said, you mentioned the word generalization. Well, psychology is a generalization of human behavior. So we are speaking in generalizations, of course. But so that's the thing about talent. It doesn't matter what the truth is. However, for teachers, it's very hard to fake a mindset if deep down we believe certain things to be true. Now, the thing about talent is it's almost a retrospective judgment, because you don't label anyone as talented until you see them do something. It's a bit like, gee, look at that girl play. She must be so talented. How do I know she's talented? Because she plays so well. So it's a judgment. No one was accused of being talented before they did anything.
Yeah.
You don't look at a 4-year-old and say, wow, that kid's going to be a great architect. They're so talented.
Yes.
So I prefer the word ability. It's a simple swap. That kid's competent, able, they've got good ability, they're developing well, stuff like that. So avoidance of that term is a great way to hopefully ensure that kids don't get this fixed idea about it's about talent. Because the thing about talent, and this is the power of mindset, and okay, it's a generalization, but kids with a growth mindset, which Harvard University said, what's the big deal? It's just a learning mindset. The definition of growth mindset is improvement through training. I can get better based on the quality and the quantity of my effort. That's really what it's about. These kids work harder. They enjoy their learning more. They're more likely to seek feedback from the teacher. They don't get so hung up about their image. They're more likely to take a chance and, give me a challenge. They're less likely to settle for mediocrity because they'll back themselves. So they make more progress. They do get smarter over time and happier. Now, the fixed mindset, well, kids don't work as hard, of course, because the definition of talent is I don't have to work as, if I'm talented, I don't have to work as someone else to get to that same level of proficiency. Therein lies the biggest danger of mindset. So kids who, if we tell a kid they're talented, they're more likely to work less hard. They're more likely to give up quickly, and that's the big one. And you know of Carol Dweck, of course, who wrote that book Mindset in about, what was it, 1990 anyway. And her seminal question was, why do some kids give up so quickly? That was the question that led to Mindset. And then she found out, wow, it's associated with this whole idea of I'm naturally gifted and naturally good at things. So, gee, you're lucky you don't have to work so hard because you're so good. So we see this play out in terms of like that coupling of words, gifted and lazy. Yes. You hear that all the time. Yes. And we say things, parents say things with good intentions like, oh, you're so talented and you don't darn well work hard. Well, if you keep telling them they're talented, they won't work hard because it doesn't match. It's almost, gee, it's a bad sign if you have to work hard. But so kids are more likely to quit, less likely to work hard, less likely to seek challenges, more likely to be image conscious as the talented one who's got to look like they find things easy and haven't worked very hard. And this is where it gets interesting with character. 30% more likely to cheat in tests, 30% more likely to lie about their results to other people. Oh, because the protection, I know it's interesting, but that whole protection of this image of self is paramount. It's paramount. They're less likely to seek feedback from their teachers. They're more likely to accept feedback as criticism and say, oh, you don't like me, when you think, hang on, I'm just trying to give you some feedback to help you. So, and they don't enjoy learning as much. And you see this a lot with musical prodigies. Musical prodigies are an underperforming group when you go to adulthood. A lot quit as soon as they get an opportunity to quit. A lot have not enjoyed their time as child prodigies. Sad to say.
Yes, yes, and I know some that have been very, not even necessarily in music, in just academic generally, where they have been getting excellent results very easily. When it gets a little tougher, they actually don't really know how to learn because it's just happened so easily for them. And like you said, they don't have the work, well, I guess you'd call it the work ethic or the attitude and the knowledge of how to work at something. It's just suddenly too hard, so I'll quit because I have to actually work at it.
To bounce back, and the resilience to bounce back. Things like Ori, as they do in everyone's life, we all have things. You've got to come back. So they're more likely to give up quickly because if it's all about talent, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm just not talented. That's I know it's a weird type of thinking, but that's what goes on in some young minds. So they give up if they can't. And I've had, when I learned about this stuff, Debbie, I thought of so many instances with myself and with students I've taught. I remember one kid who was a fine trumpet player, and he was in my big band one at the school where I was at, and he wanted to quit. And I said, Matthew, what's going on? Why suddenly do you want to give up? You're a good trumpet player. And he said, well, because I used to find it so easy, and now it's getting hard. You see, the fixed mindset, they don't do difficult. They don't like difficult. It's meant to come easy to you.
All of this discussion so far, it just brings home to me how important our job is, as music educators that are lucky enough to teach all of the kids in the school, right from like 4 years old, which sort of, I think most of my audience would be primary/elementary music teachers. It's so important. Like, I would like to think all my students believe they're musicians. They are musicians. They're musicians. They're making music. They are all able to participate and able to grow and get joy from that. And it's also super important that they can take risks, that they don't feel bad if they fail, because this is just an opportunity to learn. And if you have all of those things happening magically in your room, I think you're doing a lot for those little people, aren't you?
I agree with you. And fear of failure, again, that's another hallmark of the fixed mindset. I won't try because I might not be able to do it. Yes. Pretty sad. Did you ever read that book, Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear but Do It Anyway? It's a bit like public.
I like the sound of that one.
Yeah, I like her
What's
title.
it called again?
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
We'll put that in the show notes too.
You know, I think about public speaking, Debbie, because when I was a young teacher, I was so scared of public speaking.
Oh, really?
I could talk to kids I could talk to kids in the classroom, but put me in front of the teachers in the staff room and I was just shaking my boots. And there's so many times I remember staff meetings, I wanted to say something, but I was too scared and too fearful and my teeth would chatter and I had a real problem with it. And I was one day, and that's why I read this book, it reminded me of these things. I thought, Michael, you've just got to get over this somehow. You've just got to do it. And that's the point she makes. The only way really to overcome something like a fear of public speaking, you just have to do it. And okay, small steps, incremental steps, just maybe read a very short poem one day, something like that, just short steps. So yeah, overcoming fear. Well, what you're doing in the classroom sounds wonderful. And because that's so important that kids are prepared to take risks. Successful people fail a lot. You know, that's how you do it, because you make mistakes and you learn from it. And you know the furnace of experience. I like that quote from John Dewey. He says, you don't learn from experience, you learn by reflecting on experience. And I like to actually take that a little bit further. We learn by reflecting on experience and acting upon that reflection.
That's important. Yes.
Yeah.
You need to take that extra step.
Yeah. I mean, like feedback, even PD. If it doesn't change anything, what's the point?
Yes. And it's something that I know I've tried to add to my recent PDs. And it's something that when Deb and I present together, we do this a lot at the end. You have time for reflection, you know, and try and structure that a little. And then what are you going to change next week? Or is there something you've got from this that you're going to try in your classroom next week? What is it? And we get them to write it down and they discuss. And that's when it's powerful. If you don't do that, it's going to be gone in a week or two. And I'm finding that as I'm going through I have behind me, if anyone ever gets to see this vision, 3, it used to be 4, full filing cabinets, right? It's full of my stuff that was too important to throw away. I'm slowly getting through it, but I'm finding things from, the 90s. And it's too important to throw away. And I'm flicking through and going, I remember doing that song or those activities. And then I never went and put it into action. And so it's been mouldering in you've got to take action or it's lost, you know?
Indeed. And you talked about, I like those routines you have, you know, in reflection at the end of your PD. And what are you going to do that's different now? You know, that's what metacognition involves a lot of reflection in the moment, planning ahead, and reflecting on past action. There's one that I like too, and it's a good routine with children, is when they do a unit of work, at the end of it, I used to think this, but now I think that.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because it monitors, kids need to perceive, learners need to perceive that that self-growth is happening, that they're learning something, learning that changes who we are. And that's a lovely routine to help them see that they are growing. It's like feedback. And most of us, I think, before the wise old owl gives feedback to a child when they played some music, how do you think you played?
Yes.
Now, that can be pretty tough for kids to learn how to self-evaluate, but they have to eventually come to that position. They can't rely on external judges of their competence forever. And what I encourage teachers to do is to be specific with kids. So let's imagine, for example, they play something in the classroom on their instrument. And so rather than just say, how do you think you played? I might say, hey, tell me 2 good things about you playing right now. Because some kids can be really hard on themselves, can't they? So this really sort of enables and encourages the student to focus on 2 positive things. Now, I know that some kids will say, oh, I thought it was pretty terrible, or I did this wrong and that wrong. It's all about what's wrong. Well, what's good about it? And that's really important, because the greatest motivator, according to Teresa Abbott from Harvard University, is making progress. So we need kids to see that they're making progress in their learning, in whatever context that is. Yeah.
Yes, and I think we have to give them that language to use as well. So we need to feed them that language, like saying to little kids, they've just performed a little canon for you, and you say, oh, how could you improve? Could be one of the questions. If you ask that one, you generally get, I could practice more. You need to give them, build into your program, I think, the vocabulary and the understanding.
Spot on. And this is, you could call this metacognitive modeling. We are thinking models for our students. So I know I used
like
to
that metacognitive modeling. Well, very flash, but I like the sound of that.
Well, it all sounds flash, but it's really, it's pretty straightforward stuff, but it is powerful. And we do that by thinking out aloud. I mean, self-talk and thinking out aloud is a great metacognitive strategy. And I know, years ago, Deb, I designed a keyboard music course for general music kids when I was teaching in Dubai. I used to live over there. And I had the section at the back of the book, which was a reflection page. What did I find, what did you find challenging about the piece that you're working on, and what could you do different, all sorts of things. But it was a reflection page. So I would model what could you write? Because kids would say, what do we have to write? As if there's something you have to write, it's funny. So I'd say, well, look, here are the sorts of things you might consider. So I'm the thinking model, and they learn from us. And they get the vocabulary is very important. Being specific is very important. And, in feedback, we can feed back cognitive verbs. And I know in Queensland, Marzono and those cognitive verbs, you guys are big on that. So you can feed back. You've justified your opinion based on evidence, or you've used supporting data. You've compared and contrast. You've explained that clearly. You've defined. We use these cognitive verbs. That helps guide a student's thinking, because you're right. It's important. Language is a great directive for the mind. And so the more we can empower students with words, the clearer their thinking will be. It's richly associated with thinking processes.
Yes, and I think also my mind just went off on another tangent. At the HALT summit in Brisbane last year, So for the Hat and Lead Teacher Summit, that was my first one, and it was very exciting. And John Hattie was speaking to us about teachers explaining about their thinking. I can't actually refer if he had a little phrase for it. And he suggested that you video a lesson or a segment of a lesson, and then the teacher, but then you turn the sound down for parts of the lesson, and the teacher then explains what they were thinking at that time in that lesson, because he's always believed that, as I think you've already mentioned, that one of the biggest indicators of success for educational outcomes is the expertise of the teacher, the quality of the teaching. And he said that understanding the thinking of the expert teacher is going to help other teachers.
Well, that does consolidate that idea of we are thinking models, and we are the experts for our children. So if we look at that, say, in an instrumental teaching context, Debbie, it might look something like this. And this is there's two things I encourage instrumental teachers to do that they may not have done before. Some have, of course. One is to watch their students practice. Now, I'm thinking of the one-on-one traditional type music lesson on the clarinet or the piano or whatever. But do you know how your kids practice? And as John Hattie said, the most important feedback is actually the feedback we pick up on the students' competence and incompetence. We need to be very clear about what they can't do and why they can't do it as well. So to pick up that, it might say, "Oh, welcome to your lesson today, Debbie. It's a bit different. I'm going to sit in the corner and I want you to practice just like you do at home. I want to watch you practice."
Oh, good heavens. Wouldn't that reveal a lot?
Well, it's funny because I've had teachers come back to me and say, "Hey, Michael, I tried that idea you talked about." And what one teacher said, it just blew my mind. It's so powerful because now I know it's really targeted my teaching. I know what we have to work on. And another teacher said, well, the kid practiced for about 1 minute and then they threw themselves over the back of the chair and said, "What now? What do you expect me to do?" So
that said a lot.
Hey, look, our job, I don't mind kids feeling a bit uncomfortable. I mean, our job as teachers is to challenge, right? It's not all, there's a lot of nurture in that, but high expectations includes a bit of challenge as well, so I don't mind that. The second thing but just back on the first one, and that reminds me of a Gary McPherson study, which he found that, and I think I'm quoting it correctly, 80% of kids under the age of 14, you know how they practice? They go from the first note to the last note once through without stopping to fix anything, right? So
that's how I used to practice.
Well, So the power of words, which you've alluded to, I call that the run through. Kids, that's a run through. It ain't practice. Let's be clear about what is practice then. Hence the discussion, hence the clarity, hence the power of a whole vernacular around music practice. Now, and I ask kids, put up your hand. That's very powerful. Kids even raising their hand is a sign of volition. Put up your hand, because I speak to kids about practice. Put up your hand if you think you're a bit too much of a run-through player, if that's basically what you do. So many hands go up. Yes. Exactly. Who in this room doesn't always start at the beginning? Maybe you go to page 3 where the tough stuff is, right? So we guide them in that way. The second thing I reckon is a pretty good idea, and this is a bit like your John Hattie example of modelling you mentioned a moment ago, is be the model. So I might say, "Oh, welcome to your piano lesson, Debbie. Hey, bit of a change today. I'm going to be you. So I'll take your music. You can sit in my chair, Debbie, and I'll put that on the piano, and I model and I think through the process of how I'm practicing. So I model, and so here we go. Da 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 dum bum bum da 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 da. Oh, I made a mistake. So this is an act, It's metacognitive modeling act. Oh, how will I fix this error? That's a bit of a mistake there. I'll go back from the beginning. Hang on, I don't always have to start at the beginning. The first phrase was fine. So I'm speaking out aloud.
Yes.
I'm modeling to the student my thinking process. Right, I've got that right. I'm going to play it 3 more times slowly, and I'm going to close my eyes now and see if I can play it with my eyes closed. So we're going through the various ways that I could secure a phrase of music, and that's very powerful. Again, I had some teachers who've tried this feedback to me a while later, and one teacher said, "Hey, Michael, I tried that idea, and I was playing, and this student's jaw dropped, and she said, 'No, you don't really practice like that.'" And she said, "I do," because kids don't know. I think we assume too much. And I remember when I was a kid, my teacher would say something to me, and he'd look at me, "Do you understand, Michael?" And I'd nod my head.
Nod.
Now, the head nod has never been a good indicator of whether a kid knows that. They just nod their heads.
That's
it doesn't
right.
mean
yes. As a formative assessment tool, a head nod is not the best.
No, it's not a good check for understanding. Let's face it. God, I wish I knew this as a young teacher, but anyway, better late than never, huh?
Yep.
But so we know if we want it, the best way to check for understanding is you model, now you do it. I mean, you take slow practice. Telling a kid verbally to practice slowly does not change behavior. It's a waste of time. We need to model, this is what I mean by slow. Now you sit down and copy my tempo. So, and that way they have to do it, don't they? They do it.
Yes, and that's making me think, like in the classroom. So when I've got 25 to 30 kids at a time, and say we're getting ready for a little composition assessment task, and most of us follow some form of gradual release model where, I do one, we do one together, then you do your own, some sort of variation of that. And I think good teachers do the I do one with a lot of language around it, and with mistakes, and with if I do this, how would that sound? I don't like that. Why doesn't that sound right? Oh, I think what if it finished on do? Because we've talked about that, and it really doesn't sound finished, does it? Let's have a listen. And I mean, that was just a little example that popped in my head. But by talking through what you're doing and with your modeling, show your thinking process, probably a little slower for the younger kids. You've got to, like you said, you're probably not going to play the wrong note as the piano teacher. You might have to do that deliberately. So you put in a few little deliberate things to illustrate the point. And I think good teachers sort of do that, don't they? And they explain.
Oh, they do. And it's lovely when kids see us as, we're just learners like they are. We're just learners.
It's so
but in
important.
terms of evaluation, I used to do that. I used to, in this keyboard course I referred to, there's these little ditties that they need to master. It's a mastery teaching, a mastery learning course. So I would play some of these pieces and I say, you have to assess me and make it simple. Wrong notes. Is it too fast, too slow? Tell me about the tempo. Tell me about the expression. So yeah, it's an act. You deliberately do this and do that. And the kids would be their learning assessment.
Yes.
What you said about what's me do one and now you do one. Well, in some contexts, you can extend that one more step. And it reminds me of the William Glasser taxonomy of how we know things. Have you seen this? It's like we remember 10% of what we watch, 20% of what we hear, and then there's about 7 or 8 stages, and then we are multi-sensory learners. So when it gets to I'm seeing and listening at the same time, we recall 50% of that content. But the greatest one we and it's like 80% of what you do yourself. So now you do one is so powerful. But there's one more step. 95% is what we teach to other people. So Yeah. So
Yes.
that's one of the best metacognitive strategies we have. Can you teach me how to do this? Can you show me how to do this? Can you explain to me how you did that? Can you show Jenny over here how you did that? So teaching, enabling teaching is a very powerful strategy.
So
And kids love
what was
doing
the
it
name?
too.
What was the name of that dude?
Oh, William Glasser. Hey,
Oh,
I've got some of
Glasser.
these things.
Sorry. Yes, I didn't.
Yeah,
Yes.
Glasser.
Glasser.
Glasser. I can send you and your listeners. I've got a few things I've made posters out of, and only A4, but I could send you a
Oh,
few
no, that'd
things.
be great. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much learning for us to do as educators, isn't there?
Oh yeah, and it's fascinating. And you take what we just talked about. There's a school in Sydney I was invited to address some parents about music practice and how they can encourage their children at home. And we're talking about some of these things. And afterwards, I had this gentleman approach me, and he said, "Hi, Michael. I'm a surgeon, and what you talked about." Some of the things you've talked about metacognition, this is what we do at surgery school. And it's quite a known thing for surgeons to learn their trade. It's called see one, do one, and teach one. So they watch a procedure, now they do a procedure, but they have to teach a procedure. And he said, what's interesting, Michael, is that we found that when there's been mistakes in professional practice, it's often be that teach one step that's been missed. So I thought that was interesting.
Very interesting.
And I think that when kids realize when they teach, gee, you have to know your stuff, don't you?
Yes, so I
remember
like
when we're young teachers, you really have to know, and you have to learn how to find your words. You have to explain. You have to shift that that procedural knowledge, I can do it, but I can't explain it, to declarative knowledge, which I can do it, and I can help you. I can verbally explain it as well. It's a deeper level of knowing. It's it really, I think it shows the kids and exactly what they know and what they don't know very clearly if they have to teach concepts to one another.
Yeah, I love it. So I do, we do, you do, you teach. We can add that on the end. I love it.
Well, there'll be context where that works. Absolutely.
No, yeah, I love it. Now I haven't even gone back to have a look at how we're going with questions, because we've just gone off on this lovely,
just having a chat.
Chat, which I love, which is wonderful, Michael. I'm loving it. However, it's a bit frustrating because it's just pointing out to me all of the things that I want to get further into, and then I remind myself, but do you know what? I believe if anybody, especially an educator, gets to the point where they feel they know it all, then that's time to leave the profession.
Well, I'm with you. And I like the words of Rachmaninoff. He said, music's enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime's not long enough for music.
It's not.
And isn't it wonderful, and the richness of the musical journey, because it's so good for the self, isn't it? And there's so much that it does for us cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, physically, with skill development. It just opens up experience after experience. And for me, there's so many ways to be involved in music that everyone can express their musicality, can't they? Through different genres, and and that's why I think when if you talk about advocacy, I think that whole idea of talent is not going to help the world become a more musical place.
No.
Because there's people who think, oh, some of you are talented and some of us aren't. And so there's a dichotomy, there's a divide there. We want everyone to think everyone's got the capacity to make music, as you said in your opening statements. Everyone's got this capacity. We want to embrace that. We don't have to predict who's going to be the next Mozart and who's not. You don't have to go down that path. The most successful goal anyway is I just want to get better. And incremental improvement is one of the joys of life. Learning is a pure joy. So let's enjoy the journey. And okay, we know the kids will have different starting places. We know some are have more ability than others at a certain point of time. We know that that's basically based on the quality and the quantity of effort. And we know it's also to do with early childhood factors and nurture and things like that. We know that that's involved, but yeah, let's.
But how do we? So, but talking about advocacy, I agree, and we, of course, it makes a lot of sense. But how do we, coalface teacher, if you're a studio teacher teaching piano at home, or if you're in schools, high school, primary schools, how do you help convince society that our job is worth having? You know, when music has been fairly recently cut a bit from our school programs because it's not essential. How do we actually, what can we physically do to help tell people how important our job is? It's all right, you and I having a talk about this, and it's fascinating things with mindset and metacognition, and people listening to us, I'm sure many of them are nodding their heads at lots of things we're saying. But what do we do for the other teachers who are maybe afraid of music because they were told they didn't have talent? The administrators who just are only really worried about trying to minimize workload and not too worried about what actually happens to the children's brains, or the system people that are just, you know, they're not, you know what I'm trying to say. How do we educate the people who don't believe in us?
Very, very frustrating. And I remember giving a concert once, and then at the end of the school concert, or when I gave a concert with my students, of course, and the principal got up and, you know, with the best of intention, he said, thank you, Michael. Thank you, the music department. Thank you, wonderful boys and girls who did this concert. He says, and he said to the audience, he says, I don't have a musical bone in my body, you know. So it immediately sends a message that some people are musical and some others aren't. And of course, inside I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I wish you didn't say that. But, you know, we can't always say what we want to say. No. But no, what you say, it is very frustrating. And the thing is, Deb, there's people who are very articulate in getting messages out there about the goodness of music. I mean, Richard Gill was one of them, that music is good, but also being very clear about it's the tonal fabric that puts everything together. We know how important music. We could go on about it forever, as you said, and we are, but that's not working. And see, this is why I get back. I think unless the administrators, the decision makers, unless they're involved in music, it's going to be a slog uphill. I've come to that position because I know they know the data. They know the song room data about improving that plan results. They know stuff like that. They've been told, but they're still folding their arms. I think it has to be experienced. So, and it's a long-term journey, but I think that we would be doing ourselves a favour if we are inclusive in our language, which means forget the talent stuff, just don't go there. Focus on everyone becoming more musical and try and get them involved in somehow. But that's a long-term thing. It is personally what I do. I take every opportunity I can get to awaken people's understandings. Because these days, music's my first love and it's my main area, but you might know I do general PD now. I do a lot on metacognition and mindset. I give parent talks about encouraging their kids to embrace excellence and to go for it and to work at something in a sustained long-term project way. And I take every speaking engagement as a chance to give music a plug in my writing, give music a plug about why it's so good for personal development. So, but does that make a difference?
Sorry,
it does to some, I know.
Well, you are. And I guess if everybody made the difference wherever they could. It would help, wouldn't it?
And I think, but we do need to arm ourselves with clarity of explanation and purpose. And that's, as you know, that doesn't just happen. And the young music teacher, they might be tongue-tied if they're asked, okay, tell me why my kids should do music. Why is music so important in life? Now, after a while, we can maybe wax lyrical about it, but it takes practice. You almost need to make summary notes of, what do I really believe in, and can I articulate and advocate for music education based on, I've got one of my books, I think you know it, Bumblebee, The Rounds and Warm-Ups.
Yes, it's on my shelf. Yes, it's on my shelf.
There's a little chapter at the back. It's just a few pages, and it's advocacy. It's about why choirs are so wonderful in society. And I know some people have read that and got back to me and just said, oh, you've armed me with some material. Can I quote you? I say, you don't even have to quote me, just use it. It does, as long as it gets out there, it makes a difference. So yeah, we need to help each other be articulate. And I guess those of us who are getting older, have been around for a while, like me, maybe if we can help young teachers with their advocacy and how to maybe prepare things to say for a parent night, how to take that moment's break in a concert just to maybe applaud the efforts of the musician. Because see, if they say, oh, we've got all these talented musicians in our school, people don't relate talent with effort, you see. So to say, these are people of character, because they've worked at this. You don't just become a musician. It's a process over time, and it's character forming. If they learn how to say some of these things, then I think slowly but surely it'll make a difference. But it is a hard slog.
And there's some good bits of advice in there, and it's taken me this long to do it, unfortunately, but I finally have joined up just yesterday to Bigger Better Brains as well. And so I want to access that, some of those nice summaries and things that Anita Collins and her crew is doing.
And that's put in a way which is it's understandable, it's clear, and that's what we want to be.
And I think that's something too that I will make sure I try to do that through Crescendo in little ways with quotes and things, but I think more can be done in that space to help people to, I love this, clarify and articulate. I've written those down on my pad here, clarity and articulate, and if we can help some of the people with that.
For sure. And you mentioned the thing about posters on walls. Let's not underestimate how powerful that can be. And I think some of the posters I've made are about music practice. So like Heraclitus, what did he say? If nothing is ever repeated, nothing can be known. Stuff like that. And I think music, studio rooms in schools, they should be adorned with lovely quotes and art and saying, to lift the mind, to lift the spirit, and for teachers to refer to, and have kids read and discuss. We fire arrows of inspiration, don't we, Debbie?
Yeah. That's beautiful. Arrows of inspiration.
We know, and we never stop trying. We do know that we can't force anyone to be passionate about music or love it, but we try and we encourage, we demonstrate, we reveal our love ourselves of this area, and we certainly try those things. And that's, for me, it's just another way of putting something on a wall that might move a kid, might make a kid think. Think. And that's what we do. It's like Socrates said, I can't teach anyone anything. I can only hope to make them think. and enable their curiosity, arouse their curiosity to want to investigate further. Yeah.
I love that. And although we've not, by the way, pardon my cough, this has been months. I just can't quite shake it. I did not ask specifically about nuggets of fabulous, but you've dropped plenty on us. Like you've given us plenty of nuggets. Was there anything though that you meant to mention that we haven't yet?
Oh, look, we have a lot that we enjoy talking about, Debbie.
Yes,
so we could probably
I know.
talk, but when you talk about nuggets, that's something that I really like about metacognition. I've in my investigation, I've learned so much about really good questions. You take help. The whole idea of helping a child. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because if we, some kids will put up their hand before they've thought. They haven't even thought about it. And if you understand wait time with questioning, we know from studies, if you delay, your average wait time in a classroom is less than 1.5 seconds. Between that time between the hand goes up and the teacher said yes, if we can delay that to between 3 and 5 seconds, I think it's a 600% increase in engagement.
Oh, wow.
There's more answers based on evidence. There's less wrong answers. There's, all these wonderful things happen. So if you want nuggets, learn about wait time. Not only primary wait time, but secondary wait time is when the kid gives an answer, and then we don't immediately confirm or deny their response. You know how it's instinctively go, yeah, that's right, well done, or say, keep thinking. But it might be silence. It might be using Harvard University's favorite question. Oh, what makes you say that? What do you base that reply on? So there's some of those smart questions. And what do they do? It's a bit like delaying the perfect cadence. It delays that you delay the answer and you keep the interest there. It's the questions that pique the mind, not the answers. So you keep asking questions and delay the final cadence, if you like. So nuggets, well, metacognition, good questions. A kid asks for help. My first response when a child asks me for help, why do you need my help? What is it you can't do? Because we need kids to understand, I can't do it, miss, I need your help. And we do it for them.
We just jump in.
What do they learn from that? Yeah, what do they learn? Now, I know that's how I used to do things, but think about it a bit more carefully now, because at the end of the day, we want them to be self-determined and be able to solve their own problems and not need us. So we can scaffold that very slowly, of course, and I'm not saying you don't help kids. I'm saying we're just a bit more careful before we jump in. Have they done everything they can before they need my help? Why do you need my help? So now some of these might be age appropriate too. There's another response that kids give. You ask a question, I don't know. How do you deal with the I don't know response? Well, there's some really neat ways to deal with that. I mean, it could be, you could ask them, why don't you know? If you start to see if do I need to speak up? Is there a word you don't understand? Maybe you weren't concentrating. There's all sorts of reasons why that might be the case. So how do we deal with I don't know? Now, we could flip that and say, well, okay, tell me what you do know about this topic. Tell me something related to this topic. In other words, we're not letting the kid off the hook, are we? We're turning this into a learning experience, because we know that with the utterance, I don't know, some kids say that simply because they can't, that it gets the teacher off their back, and they know that if they say, I don't know, the teacher will move on to someone else. Well, that was nice and easy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not with some teachers. Oh, you don't know. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So it's challenge, but as I said earlier, we've got to challenge kids. Teachers, the most successful schools have universal high expectations. Mm-hmm. And that's high expectations for everyone to improve. We don't know where, just get better. We believe all kids can improve. So some of these might sound a bit even abrasive or challenging, but they don't have to be put that way. But we need to challenge kids to think deeper. So there's a couple of things anyway.
No, they are wonderful. They are, and they're really important. And it's good to be reminded of those things. You know, you get in the everyday grind of teaching, it's very easy to take the easy way out, because it is sort of the easy way out. You know, I don't know. And then, oh, good, I'll go to someone else because I've got 5 other things I need to do in this half an hour.
I know.
So
Time is the enemy.
it's that reminding yourself.
Yeah. Well, Samuel Johnson said people need reminders more often than they need to learn new things. There's a lot of good stuff we know. And even, you know, my courses, I say to teachers, and I say, look, you're going to know a lot of what we talk about today, what we do today. But I hope it serves as a good reminder of sound pedagogy and things that make your teaching enjoyable and further engage and encourage your children. And I mean, I think I've learned in my life, when things are not going right in something, often it's going back to things that we used to do, the basics, if you like. And some of these things, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with a lot of what I've talked about today, but it'll just pique them. And you hear it in a different way too, don't you? It's like variable repetition. It piques the mind because, oh, I didn't think of it like that. You know, it's a nice word. I like that word. I'll use that phrase. I like that question, what makes you say that? Some teachers will be familiar with that. Others will think, wow, that's a beauty. It's, you know, it's like the difference between like praise and feedback. Praise, we're tired teachers. It's easy to say, that's great. Well done. That's really good. But it doesn't do anything for the kid, because praise is informational as feedback. Feedback needs to be specific, quick, accurate, consistent. Good feedback is hard to give because you have to be precise with your words. It's a lot easier to say, yeah, that's good. So.
Oh, I love that. There's so much to think about. And I'm looking forward to jumping into one of your courses. I will confess I've flicked through a couple of your books that are good, and we'll put in the show notes, we'll make sure we link to where people can find you so they can look that up. Can they find you in social? Do you have a social media platform you use or prefer, or not really?
I do a bit on LinkedIn. I do a little bit on Facebook. But if you put links up, maybe I can put a 20% discount code or something like that. So if they want to have a look, they can get a bit of a Debbie special.
Oh, that would be lovely. I wouldn't say no. Someone might jump in.
I'll make a discount voucher code called Debbie20 or something.
Thank you. That's very generous.
Discount off my products if they'd like to investigate further.
Oh, I think that would be great. And we'll put all of that in the show notes so people can go to whichever episode this ends up being. Sorry, this is because I'm doing a lot of recording ahead of time while I'm teaching full time. I have to do that. So, look, Michael, I seriously think we could keep talking, but I think we have to call full time on this Fair recording. Yeah. And I think that we just have one more. You get a chance to get on your soapbox. So I just like to offer my guests the chance to finish off by getting on their soapbox and telling the world something that's most important for you to say. So what would you like to say?
Well, I think I've said it. I think I've said it. And I guess that Tolstoy's preface to What is Art, he said, one of the dangers with teaching, with life, is the more experience we get, the more we think we know about the world, the less flexible we tend to become in accepting new ideas. And I think that's so true, because it's easy to think, as you said before, that it's time to give up if we think we know it all, right? The learning psychology is a magnificent journey, and it's so exciting to learn things every day. For example, quite recently, I learnt about that saying, just do the best you can, which many teachers and parents use in the hope of encouraging their children. Now, you know what we know about saying just do the best you can? When we say that, it's the most likely outcome is the kid will do worse than if we didn't say anything at all. So you think, oh, how does that work? Well, actually, I know how it works because I've looked at the psychology and it makes perfect sense. So we won't go into that right now. The point I'm making is there's so many things out there that we have, as Tolstoy said, we've lived and worked with and believed it's become part of our schema. But is it based on evidence? And are there other ways of seeing things and doing things? So I would encourage your listeners to get out there and have a look at mindset and metacognition. It just could revolutionize your teaching. And to get specific with the teaching of practice. Quite simply, if you look at or if you visualize a simple diagram where we want kids to continue with their music, well, we know the number one reason kids quit music is because they're not getting any better, they're not making progress. We know that the reason kids don't get better is they're either not doing any practice or they don't know how to practice. So they just do the same old run through and they're not getting better. So basically what that means is if we want our children to become, to be motivated and to continue in their musical journey, yes, they've got to practice and they've got to know how to practice. And they'll be more likely to practice if they can see it making a difference, if they can see their progress. So, yeah. So there's a little bit to finish off with.
I think that is a wonderful place to finish. And thank you so much for talking to us, Michael.
It's been a pleasure, Debbie. Thank you.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. How do they answer the phone at the paint shop? Hello. Reminds me of Jack Black in School of Rock when he calls the girl forward and said, "What's that big thing you were playing the other day?" He says, "Yes, like, see this is a bass guitar. You take that thing you were playing, you turn it on its side and cello, you've got a bass." I love that movie. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things Crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.